In 1993, Jurassic Park would revolutionize the way we saw dinosaurs, combining state-of-the-art visual effects from Industrial Light and Magic with the very best of Stan Winston's giant animatronics. The movie would go down as creating some of not only the most realistic-looking dinosaurs for its time, but also the scariest with its depictions of animals like Velociraptor and T.rex, and a few very effective suspense scenes. That being said, apart from Jurassic Park, there was one other dinosaur movie that came out in 1993 I don't see too many people talking about. And no, it's not Carnosaur. Fresh off of the success of the Super Nintendo game, John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins would star in a live-action version of Super Mario Bros., a movie that I'm sure many of you have heard nothing but bad things about. Well, within that movie, the idea of creatures in the Super Mario universe like Bowser and Yoshi were actually given something of a Jurassic Park spin, which would include some very specific moments in the film that had very elaborate special effects. One such scene involved the de-evolution of Dennis Hopper's King Koopa into his ancestral form, that of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now, this moment is very brief in the entire movie and only happens at the very end once the character is hit with the bomb and the Super Scope shot from the Mario Brothers. But for a brief moment in the movie, we actually get to see something that is genuinely terrifying and honestly extremely well designed. You see, the Tyrannosaurus Rex version of King Koopa, or Bowser as he's popularly known now, was done by special effects veteran Patrick Tatopoulos, who you may recall was mentioned in a previous Dragoncurve video on the 1998 remake of Godzilla. Now, Patrick's vision for the Tyrannosaurus Rex version of Bowser in the Super Mario Bros. Movie obviously shares a lot of similarities with that 1998 remake, but when it comes to what they were doing in the 93 film, I think it's safe to say that the design went far scarier and downright creepy in comparison to anything else that was really shown off in the movie. In fact, if you go back and look at a lot of the work being done behind the scenes that featured the Goombas, Toad, and everything else for that film, you get a very dark and somewhat twisted take on what is basically just a goofy video game about a plumber from the 80s, but King Koopa is like on a whole other level. Now, the design of Super Mario Bros. Tyrannosaurus actually starts with some prosthetic effects that were applied to Dennis Hopper. These effects gradually get more grotesque and bizarre once he's been hit with the de-evolution that the movie so proudly incorporated into its plot, and in just a quick matter of seconds, Mario and Luigi watch King Koopa transform into a horribly disfigured creature with an elongated Godzilla-like jaw, a set of disproportionately sized teeth, and a grin that looks menacingly weird when put up against even the other dinosaurs in the film. Yoshi takes on something of a more traditional looking dino effect, but Koopa just ends up looking like a mangled sentient version of a dinosaur that you definitely wouldn't want to come across in real life. Now, many believe that this design was actually a stepping stone of sorts for Patrick Tatopoulos in his process to create 1998's Godzilla, and I personally understand that completely when it's brought up. Just by looking at the color of the skin, the textures and patterns of the Tyrannosaurus scales, as well as the elongated iguana-like jaw and chin that King Koopa has here, I think it's obvious that this is what would eventually wind up being a big source of inspiration or creativity for what we would all get to see in the Matthew Broderick Godzilla film, which is nothing but interesting in my personal opinion. Now, Bowser continues to evolve after being hit with a de-evolution ray, and he eventually winds up looking more like a stereotypical CGI T-Rex before transforming into a fungusy goo, which is of course a whole play on the primordial slime idea of where intelligent life came from. But before he ever went there, the creature would get this wild and honestly scary looking special effect that I personally think looks awesome. What's funny about the Super Mario Bros. Movie is that when I would go back and watch that film as a kid, I never really thought much about scenes like this, and instead would just try and pay attention to all the little parts of the movie that resembled the games that it was based on. Yoshi kind of reminded me of the baby T-Rex in the Lost World, but he's kind of silly looking. I mean, it's cool, but you gotta admit, it's nothing like Jurassic Park. But watching this movie today, while I do think it has a lot of flaws, like a lot, I love a lot of the set design and creature effects that went into it, and even got to visit the place that they kept a pretty well-known prop from the film, which I thought was pretty fun. Bottom line, this T-Rex looks like something that could come out of a derelict lab in a Jurassic Park or World movie. It's almost like a dinosaur that wasn't quite perfected while they were cloning it, and whatever they did in the design process wound up making a truly wild effect that I think more people who are into creature design should talk about. I don't know if we'll ever get to see a reference to this thing ever again, but man, you gotta admit, it's definitely something that I think would get people talking in the future. Anyways guys, these are all just my own thoughts on the subject matter. What do you think is the scariest dinosaur design that nobody really talks about? For me, right now, you gotta admit, it's very brief, but the T-Rex in Super Mario Bros. The movie, that is a weird and wild looking effect. But hey, those are my opinions, and whatever yours happen to be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below.